There was a really sweet older black lady who sent me an email after my HGTV episode aired, and she said I was the Harriet Tubman of tiny houses. And obviously she and I know I haven't done anything, as amazing as Miss Tubman, but I understood her point in that I was opening something up to black people that we previously may not have been considering, and that it was likely the first time that a lot of black people were seeing someone black living in a tiny house. My name is Jewel Pearson. I am a tiny house consultant, advocate, and dweller. I decided to make tiny house living my lifestyle in 2013 when I stumbled on another woman's story about building her own tiny house. Her story resonated with me, and then it just kind of made sense to me as far as building home. So I started researching and then started designing my house, and that was kind of how I just decided that this was what I was going to do. My tiny house is 28 feet long. It's about 9.5 feet wide. It's more of an open space. It doesn't really have rooms per se, but I have 2 overhead lofts. One of the lofts is my bedroom. One is seating space with plants and things. It could be a second bedroom if someone needed to utilize it. I have a full bathroom that includes a tub, washer-dryer combo, a flush-style toilet. I have a full living space with a very comfortable couch. That was kind of important to me as I was designing my house, so that comfort was always at the top of my list. I have a full walk-in closet, which was also on my must-have list. And I have what I consider like a galley-style kitchen. Cooking isn't on the top of my favorite list, but I do have enough space to cook a meal, and it works very functionally. And then just recently I added a sunroom space. So altogether with the new sunroom space, my house is about 480 square feet if you don't count the 2 overhead lofts. It took me about 6 months to find someone to build my tiny house design. I was building and researching again around 2014, so tiny houses are popular now, but when I was building and researching, people really thought I was crazy. So when I was having conversations with builders and I was trying to really work with a black builder, it was older builders, and there were several times I'd have a meeting with them and I'd talk to them about, I need to build this house on a 28-foot trailer, and the conversation would end because they say, well, that can't be done. And I was like, I know it can be done. I've got some examples of it being done. And so it was just the fact that not many people were able to think out of the box at that time and really conceptualize what I was trying to do. The downsizing process and getting into a smaller space was not difficult for me because I had the luxury of doing it kind of over the process over 10 years. I downsized initially from a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house, and then over the course of 10 years, right before I built my tiny house, I was living in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. So by that time, I'd pared down to, all of my favorite things. And I do have a storage. I still feel like, I don't consider myself a minimalist, but I still am saving in what I pay for parking as well as, a small storage unit. My tiny house operates very much like an RV. So I get my water and electricity from an existing structure that's already on the property. With the cities and counties not necessarily allowing tiny houses, it's very difficult to place a tiny house on a piece of property solely by itself. And they, most likely are not going to allow you to have water and electricity just for a tiny house. So I always am locating my house on a piece of property where there's already an existing structure, and then I get my power and my water from that structure. My tiny house cost me about $85,000 out of pocket, and again, I was building in late 2014, early 2015. I did have some sponsors, so some of the material was sponsored, some of the items in the house were sponsored. And when I say that, out of pocket it was $85,000, I always have the people who say, oh, I could buy a house for that amount. And then I always point out that it's not really comparing apples to apples, because that was $85,000 out of pocket, not a 15 or 30-year mortgage with interest interest, so that as that you pay $85,000, it ends up being 2-3 times, that amount overall by the time you finish that loan. So it was, $85,000, and I own my house. And what I do, is pay for parking for my house. So one of the main questions that's always asked is it, where am I going to park my tiny house? Is it hard to find a parking location for your tiny house? And that is one of the major challenges for tiny house living, because most cities and counties don't have rules around tiny houses. They're often not very accepting of tiny houses. So that is a challenge. For me, I always felt like it was something that I'd work out, it didn't stop me from building. I've had the most success in finding my locations through Craigslist, actually, and then word of mouth. But there are plenty of Facebook pages and groups in different cities that assist people who are looking for locations for tiny houses. One of the things that I have been working on is what I call cooperative communities, and that is an opportunity for Black farmers, Black landowners, and property owners who would be interested in allowing Black people who live in tiny houses or who are considering tiny houses in the future, would allow them to park their tiny house on their property. And so it's kind of like a matching service that it helps the farmer and the property owner financially, because we know that Black farmers are losing their land at astronomical rates. So it helps them financially. It might even help them with the person there being able to assist them physically with some of the work on the farm. And then it's providing that Black tiny house owner a place for parking, so that they know that they're safe and secure. So if I had to identify the worst thing about tiny house living, I would probably say it's about having a place to put it. I am about 40 minutes east of a major city. I would prefer to be, I'm a city girl, so I would absolutely prefer to be in the city. I would prefer to be in an urban area. So until that is something that changes, that is probably the worst thing about tiny house living. And for me, the best thing about tiny house living is that I have really been able to design my lifestyle. I always say that this is my retirement plan. And so with living in a tiny house, I want to be able to make decisions based on desires versus, needs, having to, make a job decision based on, the bills that I have to pay. I don't want to be in those type situations anymore. And so for me, the best thing about tiny house living is the opportunity to just kind of design your life. So I offer virtual tiny house tours and consultations. The tours are what I say for people who are interested in tiny houses and just kind of want to experience a tiny house. So I offer a tour. And then for someone who is, more sure that this is something that they want to do, then I offer a consultation, a one-on-one consultation to help them, figure out navigating the entire process. And then I also offer workshops. And so workshops, I consider them like Tiny House 101, which is the basics. And then a 201 that gets more into the building specifics. And then there's also a workshop for placement, how to go about finding a location for your tiny house. I think it's important for our community to see tiny house living as an opportunity for us. And so if people feel like I'm the pioneer or the trailblazer, I accept that with honor, because I've wanted us to see that, my tagline is, you don't have to give up luxury to go tiny. So I've wanted us to be able to see this as a viable option for us outside of conventional home ownership. And so I take that and smile.